Frankie Beverly, born Howard Stanley Beverly on December 6, 1946, in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, is a name synonymous with soul, funk, and unforgettable R&B anthems. Raised in the heart of Philadelphia's Germantown neighborhood, Frankie's love for music was ignited early on. Singing in church choirs and local doo-wop groups, he began his musical journey long before he became the iconic frontman of Maze. As a teenager, Frankie joined a doo-wop group called The Blenders, marking the first chapter of his illustrious career. But it wasn't until he changed his name to Frankie Beverly, adopting a stage persona that would resonate with generations, that his true musical magic began to unfold. Frankie Beverly's career spans 6 remarkable decades, with the most significant chapter being his role as the founder, lead singer, songwriter, and producer of Maze, a band he formed in the early 1970s. Originally known as Raw Soul, the group was discovered by none other than Marvin Gaye, who suggested the name change to Maze, a decision that would become legendary. Gaye also invited them to tour with him, a move that propelled the band into the spotlight. It didn't take long for Maze to build a devoted fan base, thanks to Frankie Beverly's signature smooth baritone voice and soulful songwriting. Hits like Before I Let Go, Happy Feelings, Joy and Pain, We Are One, and Back in Stride became staples in R&B, with Before I Let Go standing out as a cultural anthem. Released in 1981, the track became a beloved classic, especially within Black communities, often played at cookouts, weddings, and celebrations. The song's legacy was solidified even further when Beyoncé covered it for her Homecoming album in 2019, reigniting the anthem for a new generation. Frankie Beverly's music, blending the essence of soul, funk, and R&B, transcended time and genre, earning him Lifetime Achievement Awards from BET and the NAACP. Through his unwavering passion for music and his ability to connect with audiences on a deeply emotional level, Frankie Beverly became an enduring figure in the world of music, an icon whose sound will forever live on. Into the 2000s, the band continued to be a popular live attraction. Beverly, who was well known for their thrilling performances, declared his retirement in 2024, just before he passed away. First, Frankie Beverly's health issues and last days. Even though Frankie Beverly was well known for his energetic stage appearance and persistent commitment to his art, his later years were marred by health issues that, while not well documented, clouded his last days. In keeping with his cautious attitude towards personal affairs, the details of Beverly's medical condition were kept confidential, in contrast to many public individuals whose health issues receive extensive media coverage. Beverly and his family exercised prudence, only disclosing information that was absolutely required. This seclusion complemented Beverly's enduring propensity to let his music take center stage over his private life, enabling admirers to concentrate on his creative accomplishments rather than his struggles. However, it is clear that Beverly's health problems were severe enough to affect his 2024 retirement, a decision that ended a 6-decade career. The music industry, especially for artists of Beverly's era, frequently required grueling schedules with long hours on the road and the emotional weight of maintaining a band's legacy. At the age of 77, the physical toll of such a demanding lifestyle probably exacerbated underlying health concerns. She had been touring and performing with Maze nonstop for years. His deteriorating health was probably caused by the combined stress of his work and growing older, even if no specific diagnoses of heart disease, cancer, or other chronic diseases were made public. On websites like X, fans and commenters made conjectures about potential illnesses, but these were unsubstantiated in the absence of official announcements. The fact that Beverly retired was undoubtedly a grudging admission that his body could no longer support the demands of his love. Frankie Beverly died on September 10, 2024, at the age of 77, in what his family said was a quiet passing while he was surrounded by loved ones. His family made the announcement in a poignant social media post, thanking him for his life and legacy and asking for privacy during their grieving process. The reason of death was not specified in the announcement. Although the decision honored Beverly's privacy, it left fans wanting answers. Insufficient details on his death sparked a flurry of tributes and conjecture on social networking sites, especially X, where admirers reminisced about his songs and conveyed their grief over the loss of an emblem of culture. The announcement's most moving element was that Beverly's grandson, Brandon Beverly, was at the hospital with him. This picture of the closeness of the family highlighted how deeply personal Beverly's death was. For Brandon and other family members, losing Frankie meant losing a father, grandpa, and mentor in addition to a musical icon. His family's public message, which struck a balance between appreciation for his life and the obvious anguish of his absence, showed the emotional toll it had taken on them. The hospital environment implies that Beverly's condition had gotten so bad that she needed medical attention. The lack of detail regarding his illness only made fans and loved ones feel more bereaved as they struggled with the finality of his departure without knowing the reason behind it. Regardless of whether this was a quick decline or the end of a longer battle, the weight of Beverly's emotions, the millions of admirers who had grown up with Ma's music, were affected by his passing, which had an impact well beyond his immediate family. Songs like Joy and Pain, Before I Let Go, and We Are One were not merely hits. They were anthems of community, resiliency, and Black joy that were played at reunions, weddings, and cookouts. Because of his capacity to arouse universal emotions through his music, Beverly was regarded by many as the uncle of Black America. Following his passing, X saw a flood of condolences from admirers who described how Ma's music had influenced their life. These tributes, which ranged from happy times to difficult times, brought to light the close relationship Beverly developed with his audience, a relationship that made his health issues and passing all the more tragic. The loss was very personal to his family. Brandon Beverly's presence by his grandfather's side points to a close-knit family that had probably helped Frankie get through his medical difficulties. Even while not much is known about Beverly's personal family, his wife, kids, and other family members were rarely discussed in public. Their choice to declare his death and ask for seclusion was a reflection of their need to preserve their sadness while honoring his memory. The fact that Beverly was not only a part of the family, but also a cultural icon whose songs held the weight of so many people's collective memories perhaps added to the emotional toll. Frankie Beverly and the ongoing difficulty of losing May's band members come in at number 2. Frankie Beverly saw Maze as more than just a band. His melodies were brought to life by a group of musicians that shared his vision, acting as a family. As the band's leader, Beverly carried an emotional hole left by the original band members' deaths throughout the years, which tore at the heart of this familial tie. Due in part to Beverly's private character and the paucity of public records of Maze's internal history, specifics of which members died and when are hard to come across. But these losses were substantial enough to be identified as a persistent problem. Every leave, whether because Beverly had to deal with the loss of partners who had shaped Ma's identity since its inception as Raw Soul in the 1970s, whether due to death, illness, or other situations. Beverly, the band's vocalist and creative pillar, probably suffered a great deal emotionally from these losses. Members of the band were more than just co-workers. Together, they embarked on a trip that started in Philadelphia and gained recognition across the globe, due in part to the early assistance of Marvin Gaye, who advised the group to alter their name to Maze and served as their mentor. Parts of that common past were lost when these initial members left. People who recognized the cultural significance of their music and the subtleties of Ma's sound. Even if Beverly would have preferred to grieve in private rather than in public, these losses would have been extremely personal for a guy who was known for having a strong bond with both his audience and his profession. The departure of band members presented a major obstacle to Ma's continuance on a professional level. At live performances, the group's unique sound, which was defined by soulful harmonies, tight instrumentation, and a groove, was a result of the contributions of each member. Whether due to tragedy or other reasons, the original members' departures compelled Beverly to change and recruit new musicians who could maintain the band's high standards. This was no easy task because Maze's music was based on a unified rhythm, horns, percussion, and vocals that had been refined over years of working together. The practical requirements of maintaining Ma's legacy, which fell primarily on Beverly, added to the emotional burden of these losses. In addition to the individual losses of the original members, Maze's lineup was constantly changing, which is a typical occurrence for bands with lengthy histories, but a recurring obstacle to Beverly's leadership of the organization. Beverly had to continuously rebuild and reconfigure the band as a result of the turnover. Even though the precise causes of these changes, whether they were brought on by personal choices, health concerns, or other circumstances, are not always clearly recorded. It took leadership and perseverance in addition, as musical ability to keep Ma's distinctive sound throughout these changes. Being the band's songwriter and producer, Beverly had a thorough awareness of the group's sound. However, maintaining that identity while incorporating new members required careful balancing. Given that the band's success was mostly dependent on live performances, the lineup change for Ma was especially difficult. In contrast to many musicians who relied on radio play or studio records, Mays established their reputation through thrilling live performances that brought in devoted audiences year after year. In addition to mastering the music, each new member had to immediately get used to the band's dynamic stage persona and the chemistry that made Ma's performances so memorable. As the band's vocalist, Beverly was in charge of creating this synergy, making sure that new musicians could take over the responsibilities of their forebears without affecting the band's relationship with its fans. In order to continue Ma's legacy, this procedure probably involved numerous hours of rehearsal, careful selection of new talent, and a dedication to mentoring younger players. Although it is challenging to identify precise times of turnover due to the lack of detailed data, Beverly's unwavering leadership clearly demonstrates the impact of these adjustments. Beverly's ability to overcome these obstacles is demonstrated by Ma's sound, which has been surprisingly stable over the decades. Even as the band's lineup changed, songs like Happy Feelings and Back in Stride remained popular. This consistency wasn't a coincidence. It was the outcome of Beverly's steadfast commitment to his vision despite the obstacles. Frankie Beverly and the ongoing difficulty of losing Mays' band members come in at number 2. Frankie Beverly saw Mays as more than just a band. His melodies were brought to life by a group of musicians that shared his vision, acting as a family. As the band's leader, Beverly carried an emotional hole left by the original band members' deaths throughout the years, which tore at the heart of this familial tie. Beverly's composition, with its themes of love, togetherness, and endurance, frequently paralleled his own approach to these obstacles, transforming personal and professional hardships into music that uplifted others, even though specifics regarding which members were musical geniuses and his power as a leader are not readily available. Beverly's tenacity extended beyond simply modifying arrangements or locating new musicians. The goal was to keep Mays' spirit alive. Beverly recognized and respected the cultural significance of the band's music, which was firmly anchored in the Black experience. The voices and viewpoints that shaped that sound were lost when original members left. Beverly, however, managed to preserve Ma's spirit. He made sure Mays remained a lighthouse of soulful expression even as the faces on stage changed, whether it was by carefully choosing new talent or by relying on his own singing and producing abilities. The band's ongoing success as a live act was a clear indication of their tenacity. Even as the band changed, Ma's performances, which are renowned for their intensity and emotional depth, remained consistently high caliber. Beverly's power and vision are evident in his ability to guide the band through these changes while preserving their reputation as a must-see live show. The prospect of seeing hits like Before I Let Go played with the same fervor as in the 1970s drew fans to Mays' performances well into the 2000s. This everlasting appeal is a testament to Beverly's ability to overcome the difficulties of change and loss, guaranteeing that Mays' music would always be a powerful influence. Third place goes to Frankie Beverly, negotiating the demands of the music industry, both cultural and commercial. Black musicians faced structural obstacles in the music industry during the 1970s and 1980s, which were significant decades for soul, funk, and R&B music. The restricted availability of popular radio play was one of the biggest obstacles facing performers such as Frankie Beverly. The raw, soulful sounds of groups like Mays, soul, and funk genres that are deeply rooted in Black cultural expression were often relegated to urban or Black radio stations, which had a smaller reach and less commercial influence over pop, rock, or crossover-friendly R&B, especially on radio stations that catered to mainstream, predominantly white audiences during this time. A structural barrier resulting from this airwave division prevented musicians like Beverly from reaching a larger audience and, as a result, from reaching the top of the charts. This lack of popular radio play was a major obstacle for Mays. Their music did not receive the same amount of radio promotion as musicians in more mainstream genres, even though they were able to attract thousands of fans to live performances. Despite being well liked by fans, songs like Happy Feelings and Back in Stride were not as common on national radio stations as pop or rock bands' hits. This was a result of the industry's propensity to marginalize black musicians in genres that were considered niche, not a lack of skill or appeal. Even as their cultural influence increased, Maze's commercial reach was limited because of the systematic bias in radio broadcasting, which meant that their music was frequently restricted to particular demographics. The industry's propensity to define Ma's music as entirely black, which, although reflecting their cultural resonance, frequently restricted their chances for wider recognition, was another major burden Beverly had to deal with. Rich harmonies, catchy grooves, and Beverly's expressive vocals define Ma's music, which was firmly anchored in the black experience and addressed themes of love, community, and resiliency that resonated with black audiences. Maze gained a loyal fan base thanks to songs like Before I Let Go, which was published in 1981 and became anthems at black community events like weddings and cookouts. But because of their strong ties to black culture, their music was occasionally labeled as R&B or urban exclusively, which kept them out of the larger pop market that dominated the media and charts at the time. There were real repercussions for this pigeonholing. Despite having a devoted following and 9 gold albums, Maze's monetary success did not always correspond with their cultural influence. For instance, Beyoncé's 2019 cover for her Homecoming album helped to revive the cultural phenomenon Before I Let Go. However, when it was first released, it never made it to the top of the mainstream charts. Despite its universal themes and accessibility, Ma's music was sometimes disregarded by the mainstream media and award circuits due to the industry's reluctance to completely embrace soul and funk acts in the same manner that pop or rock singers do. Beverly had to put in more effort to maintain Ma's career as a result of her marginalization, mostly depending on live performances and fan support instead of the industry machinery that catapulted other performers to fame. Despite these obstacles, Frankie Beverly's tenacity was a defining characteristic of his career, enabling him to establish a distinct niche in the music business. His skill and tenacity were demonstrated by his ability to write songs that had a strong emotional connection with black listeners while yet being able to appeal to a wider audience. Beverly was aware of the emotional impact his music may have on listeners. By creating songs that were both culturally specific and widely relevant, he capitalized on this power. Songs like Joy and Pain, which combined reflective lyrics with catchy rhythms that resonated with a wide range of listeners, encapsulated the duality of the human experience. Because of this balance, Maze was able to attract listeners who valued the genuineness and soul of their music, expanding their following base outside black communities. Navigating industry challenges was also made easier by Beverly's methodical approach to his profession. Their relationship with Marvin Gaye, who found the band, then known as Raw Soul, and asked them to tour with him, gave Ma vital publicity early in their career. Through this mentorship, Maze was able to demonstrate their live performance skills, which turned into their greatest strength in a field when radio play was scarce. Beverly took advantage of this and turned Maze into a popular live performer who is renowned for their enthusiasm and ability to engage crowds. Ma's popularity revolved around concerts, which gave Beverly the opportunity to interact directly with fans and get around some of the industry's gatekeeping procedures. Even if Ma's music didn't always convert to mainstream commercial numbers, this grassroots strategy made sure it remained a cultural force. Additionally, Beverly's producing and songwriting abilities were crucial in breaking down barriers in the business. He kept creative control over Maze's music by composing and producing it himself, preventing industry pressure to follow pop trends from diluting their sound and keeping it true to his vision. In a time when many musicians were under pressure to compromise their roots in order to succeed, Ma's genuineness struck a chord with audiences who appreciated her artistic integrity. A masterclass in tenacity, Beverly's ability to create music that respected black cultural values while still appealing to a wider audience allowed Maze to flourish in spite of structural obstacles. The volume of condolences posted on websites like As X following Beverly's death on September 10, 2024, demonstrated the extent of his cultural influence. His music served as a soundtrack for happiness, solidarity, and fortitude, and his admirers characterized him as a transcendent figure across generations. As he established a legacy that went beyond industrial constraints, the systemic challenges he encountered only served to highlight the importance of his accomplishments. The tale of Beverly is one of tenacity in the face of hardship, a reminder that genuine craftsmanship may produce something everlasting by overcoming even the most ingrained obstacles. Frankie Beverly proved that his voice and the essence of his song could not be constrained by the rules of the industry. By navigating the difficulties of his time through maze and leaving a musical legacy that still inspires and uplifts.